Hello again, fellow audiophiles. I am Wave Theory, and this is the FiiO FT7. This is a $699 US open back, full size, planar magnetic headphone. This was sent to me directly from FiiO for review. They have asked nothing in return other than a fair and honest evaluation of this product. I am an affiliate link member with some retailers who sell this headphone, so some of the links that you see down in the description below where you can buy it will be affiliate links. If you like what I have to say about this headphone and you want to buy it, please consider using one of those affiliate links. I will get a small kickback if you do that, so if you want to help support the channel, that's a good way to do it. I only use affiliate link money to keep the channel running. All right, as far as I know, I can keep this unit. That's usually what happens when a unit comes directly from FiiO, but you still have my pledge to be as open and as honest in my evaluation of this headphone as possible. This is an exciting one because it has a planar magnetic driver in it that is layered with or infused with some gold and silver, and you know what? That isn't something that's happened since like the HiFiMan Susvara, so there's like maybe a little bit of a trickle-down effect. So how does this do? Is it worthy of having the gold and silver? Is it a market warper? Is it blowing things up? Or is it terrible? Find out right after shameless self-promotion.
Hi, it's me again, 14 months later and a whole foot taller. Now, since Wave Theory liked the first 10,000 subscriber play button I made him, maybe he wants a 25,000 subscriber play button. This can only happen if you subscribe though. Now, since over 60% of the watch time comes from unsubscribed viewers, I'm going to need you to subscribe. You can also sign up for his Patreon or send him money in PayPal. Links in the description. Now, on to the video.
Alright, so as usual, I try to be thorough and honest and all of that, so sometimes these videos get a little long. So I will timestamp this out, watch the parts that are of most relevance and interest to you. Okay. The FT7, again, $699 US. And it's interesting in here because FiiO has a 106mm planar magnetic driver in here with dual-sided magnets. So there are magnets on both the back and front of the driver, meaning both the ear side and the back side here. But that driver is 1 micrometer thick. The diaphragm of it, anyway, is 1 micrometer thick. And it's got multi-layer coatings on it of gold and silver. So they definitely are leveraging the different conductive properties of those metals in here to make the driver material. And again, that's interesting because the only other headphone that I can name off the top of my head that uses at least gold infusion on the membrane itself would be the original HiFiMan Susvara. And I don't know if the Unveiled does as well, but the original one definitely did as well. And you can just kind of see with the aesthetic that they're going for here is they're kind of doing a Susvara-like aesthetic and presentation to it, okay, to a degree where you can kind of see, like, hopefully the light is picking up. You can kind of see gold reflecting off of the membrane of each of them in there. So it's unique, or not unique, but it's interesting. It's rare. Like, how does it get pulled off here in the FiiO is an interesting question there. So let's continue to explore. The drivers in here are rated at 25 ohms of impedance with a 94 decibel per milliwatt of sensitivity. They are not the easiest things to drive in the world, but they are also not super difficult. Like, when I first heard this headphone, I got a preview of it at CanJam New York 2025 back in February, and I filmed this in mid-July of 2025. And I heard enough of it at CanJam, and I was like, hey, when you guys have these available, because I don't think they were in production yet. They just had a few demo units at that particular show. They are now in production, and I was like, hey, I would like a review unit when you get a chance there. And they were like, sure. And they sent one in time, right? Didn't happen right away. But like, back to the drivability there, like when I was at the show, a FiiO rep like handed me one of these and was like, do you want to hear this? I was like, sure. And it was just kind of like in the middle of one of the walkways and not really at their table where this happened. And so all I had with me in my hand at the moment was my iBasso DX260 DAP, or digital audio player, which is not a weak DAP, right? The amplifier in it is not, underpowered really for what it is. But when I plugged this into that, I was just kind of like, I'm not really hearing a whole lot of bass. Maybe it's a little bit shouty in the mids, that kind of thing. Didn't really love it. But then a spot cleared at the FiiO table where a K17 unit opened up. And by that time, I had heard enough of the K17 to know that it was a pretty competent device with a reasonably powerful amplifier in it. And so I really quickly jumped over there and plugged that FT7 unit into the K17, and there was like, oh, okay, this sounds much better. All right, and like that really got me interested in asking about getting a review unit. And so the moral of that story real quick is that like these do require a little bit of power to sound right, but they don't require a ridiculous amount. Most portable devices are probably not going to cut it, but most desktop devices, most desktop amplifiers probably will. All right, so that's just something to think about as you're shopping around for this. Like, depending on what your use case is and where you like to listen to your headphones, you may need to think about that a little bit. All right, with that, let's go ahead and cut to a clip where I'm overhead, or the camera is overhead, and I show you the accessories and all of that. And I gotta warn you here that it's been hot where I am, and my air conditioner, for whatever reason, has been louder than usual today. I don't know why that is. My microphone picked it up for a little over a minute in the next clip, but then you'll hear that hum kind of go away after that. So sorry about that, but we're going to make it through, and it does clear up again shortly. So let's cut to that clip and talk about the accessories and the build and all of that. All right, going to do the overhead view of the accessories for the FT7 because they are well thought out and fairly extensive. I should also mention you may hear a hum in the background, which is my furnace / central air conditioning unit running. It is pretty hot where I live here today in the middle of July. And so it's been running a lot. So sorry if the microphone is picking that up, is what it is. Hopefully it'll cut off soon and at least take a break. All right. So you get this case. FiiO branding on it. Okay, nice handle up top. Similar case to like what came with the other FTs, like the FT1s, FT3, etc. Okay, unzip it here. I'll turn it this way so we can see all of it. And look at this. You have a nice holder for cable connection adapters. Go ahead and pull those out so you can look at them. The cable, stock cable, is terminated 4.4 millimeter Pentacon balanced, and so it comes with two adapters. FiiO was very thoughtful to include these. You get a 4.4 millimeter Pentacon to 1/4 inch / 6.35 millimeter TRS single ended, and then you also get a 4-pin XLR balanced to Pentacon in there as well. So they were really thoughtful in how they did this cabling thing here. We'll talk more about the cable here in a moment. I just want to get the accessories out so you can see them. Here is the cable. We'll take a closer look at it here in a moment. Okay, the headphone itself with a nice zebra wood grill there on the back. Again, we'll take a closer look in a moment. Let me get this case out of the way and get the camera in just a little bit closer on these accessories so we can see them a little better. All right, back. Camera adjusted, air conditioner turned off for now, although I swear that has run in the past and it's not been picked up by the mic. And it's usually not as loud as it was just now. I don't know what's going on with that. Anyway, back to the video. Other things that were in the packaging that did not fit in that case is that you get a second set of pads, right? And they are, you know, a fabric pad where a lambskin is what is on there. And I switched one out while the video was paused, and I'll show you what that looks like here in a moment. Okay, but yeah, you do get two sets of pads. It's just that obviously the second pad can't fit in the case. Okay, let's talk first about the cable, then we'll come back to the pads here. I really like that FiiO included these adapters, okay, of the 1/4 inch here, single-ended, okay, with a 4.4 millimeter Pentacon there, 4.4 millimeter Pentacon female there, 4-pin XLR balanced right there, and that is because the cable has 4.4 millimeter Pentacon balanced termination on the amp end. It's got dual 3.5 millimeter TRS on the headphone end. The cable is okay. It doesn't really tangle, but it does kind of loop around back on itself with relative ease, like you see there. But again, it doesn't tangle. It comes, you know, it straightens out there pretty quickly, pretty easily. All that. There's the dual 3.5 millimeter TRS. The cable itself has like this kind of fabric-y kind of cover over it, and you can kind of see and also feel the wires in there. It feels like they are kind of wrapped around some kind of central material on there. And so the cable is a little bit stiff and a little bit on the heavy side. There's one of those loops right there that I talked about. And all of that. It's still not the worst cable. It's about 3 meters long, roughly 10 feet. Not the worst cable I've ever used. Not the best. Okay, kind of in the middle there. The only other complaint that I have about it, and this is true with both of these plugs here, but especially with the single-ended adapter, this gets a little bit long. All right, and so with that much plugged in, you can get a fair amount of torque. Okay, on the cable here, or on the jack into your amp right there, or you can bump this and do some damage. So this is really not mobile or transportable friendly, which, I mean, it's an open back headphone, which isn't friendly for that anyway. But like, I would take particular care if you're going to use this to like try to strain relieve this somehow if you can. So again, middling thoughts on the cable. Not the best, not the worst. Okay, just kind of there. All right, you might want to get a shorter one, though, because, again, 3 meters long for some desktop applications, that's going to be a little bit too long. We've got dual 3.5 millimeter cable entry here, and they are recessed jacks, okay, on the headphone, and they do accommodate most, like, aftermarket cable. Okay, like here is the Corpse Cable's a Gravedigger, where you see we've got kind of a thicker barrel on the plug here. But this is big enough, okay, it does actually fit right in there, works just fine. Okay, but you still need to take care. The only cables I had on hand that did not fit this are like the really thick Dana cable stuff. Okay, which, you know, the one that I have is the Lazuli Rhapsody, and I have the Symphony in for review, and those are multi-$1,000 cables that you're probably not plugging into a $700 headphone. Okay. So then back to the headphone itself, and yeah, I have one of each pad on here. As like I said, I switched while I was gone. So let me show you the pad swap here. This is pretty straightforward. You just kind of get your fingers in there, pull gently, and it will eventually pop free. There's the inside of the driver. Okay, dual magnet structure, so you see magnets there, and we have like the silk screen color cover material here. You also see some hint of the wire traces on the membrane. The way the pads fit on there, and I'll put this lambskin one back on here, is we've got these little like snap-in-place tabs here, but then the top one has little tiny pegs on either side of that snap, and there's a corresponding, you know, little peg holes there on the top of the driver housing, and so that's nice because all you need to do is line that up, and then they snap right into place. Okay, and they're on there nice and snug. One of the easier and more elegant pad rolling systems I have come across in a while. So that's nice. We'll talk more about the sonic differences between the fabric pads and the lambskins here in a little bit. The pads have a slight forward angle to them. So this is the back. They are just a little bit thicker in the back than they are the front. You can see it there. So you do get just a slight forward angle with both pads. They are similar in that nature. Similar in nature on that front there. All right, and you see the lambskin are perforated on the outside. They are also perforated on the inside, and then they are solid on the part that's up against the side of the head. The headphone itself is pretty well built and generally nice looking. Okay, carbon fiber accents there for like the jack housing, and then also around here on the cup. We get a zebra wood grill here on the back, which I do believe is real zebra wood. Looks very nice and is very well finished, is very well done. The driver membrane, again, has like layers of silver and gold plating on it, and so you can kind of see little hints of gold accent on the membrane down in there, which is also kind of cool looking. Suspension strap headband right here that has an appropriate amount of clamp that feels neither too tight nor too loose to me. Your mileage may vary. The head size adjustment is clicky. Right there, it seems to stay in place pretty well, though. My one big aesthetic complaint is, why is this orange? That just to have that one orange accent right there is just a little odd. And it's like kind of like the fuzzy audio color. And it's like, get your own thing, FiiO. Okay. So I mean, for an otherwise generally decent looking headphone and all and so forth, that's just the one weird thing I have about it. 427 gram mass. So it's not super heavy. The weight is distributed well. I did not have any physical comfort issues when it was on my head at all. There is a little bit of driver crinkle, and there's just kind of like some, when you take this thing on, you take it off, put it on, like getting it on and off your head, there are some like creaks and crackles here and there. And sometimes I wonder if it's driver crinkle that I'm hearing, or if it's like the headband itself flexing, because it's not doing it so much now, but I could kind of hear this kind of a flex when you bend this strap on the headband here a little bit. So you might hear a little bit of that kind of thing as you move this thing around on your head, get it into position, take it on, pull it off, you know, that sort of thing. Just something to be aware of. Okay. But generally, pretty decent in the build and in the aesthetic. All right, let's go back to me on camera talking about other things. All right, so again, to sum all of that up, comfort, aesthetics, build, and the fit and the finish and all of that, like decent, the stock cabling, decent to above average on most of those things, not stand out amazing in any of them, and certainly not poor in any of them either. So that's just kind of where it is for now. So let's start transitioning to sound. So what test gear did I use to listen to this? And that actually is somewhat plentiful here, so bear with me for a moment. I'm an all-digital music listener, so I used either FLAC files or DSD files, lossless or high-res. In the case of FLAC files, they could have been played locally or streamed via Qobuz. For DSD files, they would have been all played locally. All of that through Roon. Roon endpoints would have included Sonar Ultra Rendu streamer routed through either a Singer SU6 or a new arrival in the Vice Engineering INT204 DDC, and then either direct USB from a Sonar Ultra Rendu into a Lampezator Baltic 3 DAC, or through one of those two DDCs into a variety of other DACs in there, including Berkeley Alpha Series 2. I had just did a review of the Live Harmony Micro DAC. This was involved in there. I have a Topping Centaurus in for review. This got some time on that as well. And then I have a stack of a Shit Mimir and Midgard. This briefly got used on that. FiiO K17 that I mentioned, I did some more listening here. I also have in the really high-end Dynatone Headspace amplifier. And then, so I mean, it ran the gamut. Aoun S17 Pro Evo. Okay, Shit Bifrost 2 was another DAC in there. Point is, I used a variety of things from a variety of different price points to listen to this. All right, let's dive in. What did I find? There are two different sound signatures here, depending on which pad you want to go with. And so, like, that changes it a little bit. So let me go ahead and just like talk about the pad differences here real quick. Then I'll come back and talk about my evaluation with the pads that I used the most. All right, let's talk about the sonic differences between the pads here, or just the differences between the pads in terms of the fit and the feel. I think the headphone looks better with the lambskins on it than it does with the fabrics, but your mileage may vary on, of course, your mileage may vary on all of these things that I am saying, right? But I just prefer the aesthetic of the lambskin over the fabric. Okay, the sound is definitely different between the two of them, though. They fit and feel the same. They have basically the same amount of softness and plushness to them. It's just that you have a leather feel against the side of the head with the lambskins, and a fabric feel against the side of the head with the fabrics here. The fabrics should breathe a little bit better, but they don't really for me. And there's like one weird thing that we'll talk about that happened with me on the fabrics, and I didn't end up using them as a lot because of it. But I don't expect it'll happen to many of you. Okay, the the sound differences on these. With the lambskins, you get more weight, more heft, a little bit more warmth, a little bit more seemingly dynamic impact. It's just, I don't think it's more actually impactful. Like, I don't think it's more dynamic or active or lively, because the pad doesn't really change that. It doesn't really change the driver motion on that so much. It just kind of pads often just like change the relationship of the driver and the ear, like that geometric relationship, or like the distance between driver and ear, which has frequency outcomes. I don't think that really happens here. It's just that it doesn't happen a lot, though. There are definitely some tonal differences between the two. It's just that the lambskins sound a little bit warmer, fuller in their tone and all of that. So like when the kick drums hit and all of that, there's just a bit more weight to it than there are with the fabrics. Though I think the lambskins are also a little bit bigger in stage, and they're a more fun listen, but they also get a little bit more tonally uneven than the fabrics do. You get into the upper mids, lower treble, and it gets a little peakier. Treble timbre, like cymbal crashes and all of that, are not quite as well balanced or smooth on the lambskins as they are on the fabrics. So these, I think the mid and treble timbre is more realistic and natural with the fabrics than it is with the lambskins. But again, you're sacrificing some weight and heft and warmth to the tone by using the fabrics as well. Outside of that, there really were not like any kind of detail retrieval differences that I could pick out. Like all of the sounds that existed here, and vice versa. They just had a little bit different tone to them, as I've already described. Now, for me, I had an issue with the fabrics in that I think I had some acoustic impedance issues going on, because these started to pressurize my ears, my eardrums, more than the lambskins did. And I don't know if it's the perforation on the lambskins or just the way that they fit against the side of my head. They are not quite as sealing, don't seal quite as much, or like what the difference is. These still do seal, because again, I think there's more bass and like bass extension with the lambskins than I could pick out with these. But these just, they built up pressure on my eardrums. The fabrics did a little bit too much, and over time right there, and it just got very uncomfortable for me. So I ended up not using the fabrics very much once I learned that. So all of the comparisons and all of that I'm going to do with other headphones is going to be with the lambskin pads on it, because that's all I could really stand to do after a while. Again, I don't expect many of you to have that issue. Those acoustic impedance and ear pressure issues are pretty rare for me as well. Like, I mean, I have listened to well over 100 different headphones now. I mean, dozens upon dozens of them. And maybe this is like the third headphone that I can remember anything like that happening on. And it was just with the fabrics. The lambskins were fine. Okay, so it's not a thing that I expect most of you to have to deal with on this headphone. It's just, unfortunately, my cross to bear there. Okay, back on camera. So then going forward, most of this review and comparisons are going to be with the lambskin pads, because it has to be. I couldn't comfortably use the fabric pads for long enough to do a full evaluation. Unfortunately, the lambskin pads were the ones that came installed out of the box on this unit. So, and they were the ones that were they were the pads that were on the unit that I got to listen to at Can Jam. I am interpreting that to mean like that the lambskins are kind of like the intended use, if you will, and the fabrics are the switch up. So I also ran with the lambskins because of that. Okay. A little bit warm, but mostly neutral in terms of overall frequency response there. So again, neutral, leaning warm. Decent, though maybe not class-leading bass extension. It's not quite like Harman bass shelf tuned. And there is just a slight roll-off. You get down below about 40 hertz or so, but it's not a lot. Okay, I mean, it sounds more linear than it doesn't. Okay, all that, so that's good. This one manages to avoid the issue that I heard on the FT1 Pro, where the driver could overexurge, okay, and slam into the magnets. This did not happen. Like the track Why So Serious by Hans Zimmer, nice and clean. There was some distortion in it, but it wasn't because the driver is being, overexerted or anything like that. It's just that because it's a really bass heavy track and it's hard to play cleanly kind of distortion, but pretty good, right? Nothing really to complain about there. Okay. And then like there's a nice like weight and heft to the sound of this one too, and it's like reasonably impactful. It's not going to hit like a Fostex or a Focal, but it's got some impact like with kick drums and electric bass guitar string plucks and that sort of thing. It definitely has some physicality to that as well, with some weight to the tone behind that initial impact as well. Bass texturing and all of that is reasonably good too. Bass performance overall, for the most part, I think is the star of the show here with the lambskin pads. The one exception is that at times with some kick drums, particularly if they are very aggressively recorded and forward in a mix, can sound just a hair splashy, just a little bit. Okay, usually it's not distracting. Most of the time I don't notice it, but when I really listen critically and did some comparison work, which we'll get to the headphones I compare to here shortly, just the kind of kick drums, really hard aggressive kick drum hits, or very aggressively plucked electric bass string guitars, bass guitar strings, there we go, could just sound just a hair splashy, okay, at least on their impact, okay, or on the attack side of them. All right. You get into the mids and the treble, and things are still mostly good and I think price appropriate in terms of their performance, but the tonal balance starts to get a little bit more uneven. There are a few peaks and dips in the frequency response in the upper mid-range and lower treble and up into the air frequencies there. So cymbal hits, like you can tell what you're listening to and you can hear them. They are just a little bit shimmery at times, and they can be just a little bit peaky. A little bit sharp and all of that. I did not hear a whole lot of sibilance in vocals, in the vocals though, like not a lot of sharp S's or T's or things of that nature. That was still mostly clean and clear and smooth. But particularly on some tracks that may not be the best recorded, like just the way this is tuned cannot, like, it can exacerbate some poor recordings up in the treble a little bit. So that got a little fatiguing to me in time. But again, it's better, it's reasonably good, right? It's not terrible. It's not, in my opinion, deal breaking for a $700 headphone by any stretch. I've definitely heard worse on all of those traits up at $700, but I've also heard better, okay, and so forth there. So other things like vocal and instrument timbre, like pianos, acoustic guitars, stringed instruments, brass instruments, and all of that sound reasonably good, but just because of the somewhat unevenness of the tonality, they could sound a little bit more natural than they do with the lambskin pads. This is one thing where it is a bit regrettable that I couldn't really use the fabric pads very much, because that tonality does smooth out a fair amount with the fabric pads. So hopefully you can use those and then you don't also miss the bass, although if you're an EQ person, you could probably EQ up the bass on those pads. Again, I just couldn't listen to them long enough to really check that kind of thing out, unfortunately. All right. But like with the lambskin pads, the overall presentation of this headphone seems to be going for like an active, dynamic, impactful, big sound stage, is kind of like a very engaging kind of sound. Again, a little bit more active in the dynamics, fairly impactful in the bass, big sound stage, some fun and some energy in the sound overall. So I mentioned the sound stage, fairly big, not the biggest I've heard, but definitely far from small. Pretty good lateral imaging and separation. For the price, you get a reasonable amount of depth too. All of that stuff suggests here, and I think is true, that the resolution and the detail retrieval are also pretty good. They may not be class leading, but they are also far from poor. They do seem appropriate for the price point to my ears. So that includes, like, again, overall like holography in the soundstage, because I don't think you can be really holographic in the soundstage without being highly resolving. Okay, texturing, detail retrieval, all of that kind of stuff, yeah, appropriate for the price. And maybe just a little bit forward in the presentation, but not so much to be distracting or fatiguing for me. I think my fatigue with this headphone came after extended listening time with that slight unevenness in the tonality of the upper mids and treble. Okay. So some quick comparisons here. I don't have a whole lot of headphones in that are open back here right around, the $700-800 mark. But I've got the now $420 HiFiMan Ananda Nano and the now $999 HiFiMan Arya Organic. So the FT7 kind of fits roughly halfway in between, approximately in terms of price, between these two. And so does the performance fall roughly halfway in between? Yeah, I think it does. Yeah, I think it slots in there quite nicely. It is clearer. The FT7 is clearer, more resolving, more refined, more three-dimensional, and more holographic than the Ananda Nano. The Ananda Nano may be just a little bit punchier and slammier and extended in the low end and present in the deep sub bass here, but that's just a trait of the Ananda Nano, where even in HiFiMan's own line, it's one of the slammier, harder hitting in the bass headphones in their entire lineup of any price, and they're maybe to a slightly exaggerated extent at times, although that can certainly be fun with some genres of music. All right. The Arya Organic, I think, is a little bit, more organic sounding, right? It's got a little bit more natural timbre to it than the FT7. It is a little bit more evenly tuned with better relationships, more realistic and natural relationships between fundamental frequencies and their harmonics, particularly through the mids and the treble, as was discussed, could be a problem area here with the FT7 on the lambskin pads here. The Arya Organic, I think, also is a little bit more bass present than the FT7 is, particularly in the very deep sub bass, below about 60 hertz, all that. It just has more presence down there and a little bit better bass extension. I think they are very close to each other in terms of the physical impact of the sound, the rumble, the slam, the punch, that sort of thing. The Arya Organic and the FT7 are very close to each other. The Arya Organic is also more resolving. It is more three-dimensional. It's more holographic. It's just a generally more convincing and realistic presentation overall, but it should be, because it's $300 more expensive right now and started its life out as $600 more than the $700 FT7. But the point is that the FT7 seems to very appropriately scale its performance or relate its performance to its price. Okay, it sounds like it is roughly halfway in between these two HiFiMans in overall performance, and these two HiFiMans have been my reference points at those price points that we talked about here. So the fact that the FT7 slots right in between them and is priced right in between them is right where it needs to be. Okay, that is very appropriate and all of that. So with the FiiO FT7, you get a headphone that is generally fun to listen to. It has a few minor tonal quirks to it that aren't going to be bothersome to many. They're not a deal breaker for me. They can lead to a little bit of fatigue over extended listening time with the lambskin pads. The fabric pads, again, are a little bit tonally smoother. You do sacrifice some warmth and weight to the sound with the fabric pads over the lambskin, but they are, again, a little bit tonally smoother and a little bit better in timbre through the mids and the treble. All right. The headphone is generally well built, it's comfortable, and again, it has very price appropriate performance. So is the FT7 a giant killer? No. Is it terrible? Definitely not. It's pretty good. Okay. So what it is just another rock solid option here around, in the $700 to $800 space of headphones there, if you like the sound description that I'm giving here. The other thing to consider also is that the stock cable that comes with it is one of the better cables. Like it's not perfect, as I have already talked about in this video, but the different plugs and adapters that it comes with, and just the fact that it's not just outright awful, means that you can use it with this headphone for a little longer than a lot of stock cables you will want to use them for, right? And that really adds to the value, because even though there are some excellent budget cables out there, like from Heart Cable and Audiophile Ninja as two examples, even on that budget end, you're still looking at like, $65 to $80 on top of the $700 for this headphone to get an aftermarket cable. But you're not pressed into doing that as quickly with this headphone as you are many of the other competitors. Again, because of the compatibility of the plugs they gave it, and just the fact that the cable is okay and doesn't suck, right? Okay, so that's something to factor into buying decisions as well. So does the FiiO FT7 get my recommendation? Sure, it's not world beating, but it's very much price appropriate, and it has a sound profile that I think many are going to enjoy and be engaged with, and it's reasonably comfortable and all of those things. So for those reasons, you can put it on your list to check out if you're looking for a headphone in this price range. So thanks for watching my review of the FiiO FT7. Please remember to like, subscribe, comment, check out my PayPal, my Patreon. Generally do those things you do to support YouTube channels, and as always, enjoy the music.